Okay, continuing on, and Alice Bailey's Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, certain questions and their answers, and this is answering the question of the Tibetans' 5 reasons for speaking on esoteric psychology and these topics specifically, of why they are necessary in our lifetime to learn about the 7 rays. And the last video, with about 4 minutes or so, should have the first reason, and that was to do with psychology, saying that currently traditional psychology is in a cul-de-sac. You know, the cul-de-sac is the end of the road where you have to basically turn around. There's no further you can go. When you approach a cul-de-sac in a community, it's just, well, I just said that. But basically it means that if that's the point that psychology has reached today, we need to go further, but we're prohibited from doing so for certain reasons. And those reasons esoteric psychology offers is that we, again, like we talked about in all the other videos, we're only studying half of the equation. And by taking the rest of the information and adding it to it, we have the opportunity to go further. So that's why the Tibetan is speaking on this topic of esoteric psychology, so we can learn about the other half of identifying the self and learning about the self versus the old or traditional modern psychology ways of studying the things, the temperaments of a person and the things that make a person based on their ancestry or their latent desires and the Freudian stuff, sexual nature and different psychological things, or like it says organized psychology, which is what we've seen with the experiments that have been done on people for years back. So you go back to the jail, I forget the specific name of the person who did it, but there's even a movie, and there's information about the jail experiment where they had half the people, everyone was a subject in the experiment, lots of participants. Half of them were told that they were prisoners, half were told that they were the jailers. And they had them enact this and live in that environment and enact this and set up their own rules and things like that. And people started to take things too far. Another psychological experiment was the one with the shocks. So they had people on opposite sides of the screen, one person thinking they're delivering higher and higher levels of shock treatment to the person on the other side for answering questions right or wrong. And the testers said that you have to turn up the voltage regardless. If they get it wrong, you have to turn up the voltage. And they would hear the other person screaming in agony on the other side, and they're just like, oh, I don't want to do it. And some people were feeling like you have to do it. It's part of the experiment. And they're just these different experiments of testing the limits of human nature and what a human will do. So those kinds of experiments. And then the last one that was really also famous and outrageous is the ones where they had little children being handed different dolls of different skin colors, the black dolls and the white dolls, and asking them, which one do you think is good? Which one do you think is bad? Which one do you think is associated with certain words like ugly and dirty and stuff like that? And seeing that the conditioning of our society is to show that white is light and good and black is dark and ugly and evil. And then to ascribe those labels to cultures and individuals, and how that mindset starts to trickle down, and how the things that we say in our culture and the things that we do, our practices, start to create organized psychological frameworks and things like that. So these kinds of experiments that have been done on people for years and years and years, and then also how that was dovetailed into our advertising and things like that, where they tell you that the first magazines, the researchers realized that if you put an advertisement on the bottom right corner of a page in a book, that's where the eye naturally gazes when you're reading a magazine. Before you turn the page, you flip. So they were like experimenting all these things to learn about. Let me see if I can get the color focus. I don't think I'll be able to fix it. Let me just go this way. The sun keeps moving, but I'm grateful for the sun. Let's see. I'll be dark, but you see the beautiful background. Still here in Bali. Okay, so the different kinds of experiments that are done traditionally have been on human beings and on our organized thinking, and have been used and trickled down from different experiments and tests that are also done in Nazi Germany and things like that have trickled down in ways to control a society and control our race. And that has us in a psychological cul-de-sac, more or less, because we haven't been using psychology as a tool, as a science for uncovering or unlocking our gifts, our strengths, our abilities, and things that make us better, stronger, more whole, more fulfilled, i.e., things that are of the soul. And esoteric psychology, one of the main things that it aims to prove through knowledge of the seven rays, et cetera, is proof of the soul, right? And so this will take us from the cul-de-sac of psychology essentially forward. So that's one of the reasons the Tibetan has written on esoteric psychology. And so now we're moving on to reason number 2. I think that's too dark. Let's see if we can compromise. I don't know which. And then I hope you can hear me too. Let's do that. Let's give you the view, and hopefully you can hear the sound. Continuing on with reason number 2. And this is on page 119. If you're following along in the physical book or on the publisher's website, you can also type in 119 in the search bar, and it'll jump to that page in the book. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're doing well. The second reason that the Tibetan has written on the seven rays and recommended that we study it is that if there is one thing that has emerged into the minds of investigators as they have studied man, it is the fact that he is essentially dual. Psychology has shown that in the consciousness of every human being is a sense of duality, that man is in some mysterious sense two beings, and that it is the warfare between these two which has led to all the neuroses and complexes which tax the ingenuity of trained psychologists to solve. The initiate Paul referred to this when he spoke of the eternal warfare going on between the carnal mind and the heavenly nature, and all aspirants who are occupied with an intelligent struggle towards liberation bear witness to the same. Paul points out that victory is won through Christ, and I give a clue to the importance of this study of the rays when I state that esoterically, these seven rays are the sevenfold expressions of the cosmic Christ, the second person of the Trinity. So again, this is breaking down religion to the core. So understanding that Christ consciousness is the state of understanding the Trinity, the origin of all that is, the source energy plus the spirit plus the intelligent activity to move through love and wisdom and to consciously use your power, that creative life force, that ability to create and destroy, to be constructive rather than just destructive, to add value rather than just to consume or take or reduce, subtract from others. And this says that the study of the seven rays can help one attain the different understanding of the sevenfold expressions of the cosmic Christ, because each of the seven rays is a collection of energies that influences each and every one of us. And understanding that in full brings us monad awareness, which is Christ consciousness. Bewildered men and women go in their thousands to the clinics of psychologists, carrying with them the burden of their dual natures. And psychologists in their thousands recognize this duality and seek to unify the dissociated aspects. When the true nature of the seven rays is grasped, and when their effect on humanity in expressing the seven types of men is also understood, we shall then approach the subject of man's duality with greater intelligence. We shall comprehend better the nature of the forces which constitute one or another of these dualities. This is the true esoteric science. The science of the seven qualities or rays and their effect upon the myriad forms which they mold and energize is the coming new approach to the correct method of training and developing the human family. That's amazing. So we can train and develop in a different way than our schools and our current culture teaches us, and so that we can be an understanding of our dual nature and how to control that by understanding how each of us is affected, and infected by the disease of out of balance emotions, out of balance triggers, the inadequacy of ability to handle trauma, rather than running to one of these thousands of psychologists who themselves are also dual in nature and having to balance their duality. We can better understand the nature of man through this practice, and it says it will give us greater intelligence and how we can better comprehend the nature of the forces that constitute one or another of the dualities, because each of the 7 rays in itself has dual aspects, attributes. And if you can see which side you're leaning towards, you can balance it out, right? And of course, people can do this in a very mundane, very easy way, just saying like, oh, I tend to be more sad. Or you do the traditional psychology tests and you're like, oh, I'm this kind of temperament or whatever. So I can just, like people say that the conscious community tells you to just be happy, just think happy thoughts. But it's not about just prescribing a very superficial remedy. It's about understanding and learning all the different nuances and how to balance that out, which traits specifically are assigned to which ray, and how do you balance out which ones are you heavy in and which ones are you lacking in, what do you develop, and taking a very conscious look at our psychology through this method, instead of just typecasting and diagnosing through our heredity, is that a word? And our mental IQs and things like that. Instead of just labeling things, going deeper is what this is saying, is the new approach and the correct method of training and developing the human family. Continuing on. Modern exoteric science knows much about the outer form or matter aspect and its electrical nature. Esoteric science knows much about the nature of the subjective energies and the qualities which color and condition the form. When these two knowledges are brought intelligently together, so again, even like with metaphysics, when you study in the University of Metaphysics, they have courses and they teach you about metaphysical healing practices, but it also says that this doesn't replace or discount or discredit traditional Western psychology. It just incorporates and adds to the basic understanding that you basically always need a medical practitioner, get a diagnosis, and go through their process, that there's also an additional method of healing which starts in the mind. Like we know through the placebo effect is possible. You start with the mind and getting certain things in place and in process, which can happen through having a metaphysical practitioner guide you through certain healing activities. There's different kinds of modalities, and that practice will actually start and stimulate the healing process, which can then be supplemented by the medical process, the traditional medical process, or even done without needing to go to that step, depending on the level of dis-ease or disharmony that a person has allowed to grow in their body and in their mind. So this again says our aim is to use these knowledges intelligently together, where historically we've been taught to completely dismiss and discredit one entirely, which has left us in a cul-de-sac of knowledge of who we are and what we're capable of. But once we use them intelligently together, we shall evolve a truer and more accurate psychology and a new science of human culture. Then the work of unifying man, the psychic entity, and man, the conditioning soul, will go rapidly forward. And that's the end of the second reason. I think there's about 5 here in total, but I'm going to have to end it here and get ready to take off for some activities for the day. In this video, in a way that I haven't for a while, is that I have my bookmark here with the Great Invocation. Can't see that at all? The Great Invocation. Let's read this. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. Christ consciousness. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. I'll talk to you all later. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.